Hello YouTube, I'm Jack Clark, the Musketeer, coming to you with another video. How are you? So of course, in addition to the changes that were happening with the OCG ban list that I have talked about in my previous video, there are a couple of changes that were not on the list that I gave you that are also going to be happening. So the list I did give you is completely true, which is great and lovely, and is going to be an interesting list. However, there are a few more changes which of course were neglected to be included on that list. So let me just go through those now. There are only a couple, so I'm going to go through them very quickly because there is something much more interesting that will be happening for the OCG around the time of this list's introduction, so I'll get to that in just a moment. So of course the additional changes that will be happening to the OCG ban list are going to be the fact that Chaos Sorcerer, Fire Formation Tenki are both semi-limited, and Reasoning is going to be unlimited. See, these cards are going to be fine at their relative new kind of delegations. We've got Unlimited Reasoning. Reasoning, of course, was not used at all, so unlimiting is pretty fair, and I mean any deck that can make use of Reasoning efficiently now has Reasoning at free, which means they can be making it more consistent, which is lovely. So Reasoning is great, and just like its namesake, is a reasonable hit. Aha! I made a joke there. Funny. Let's move on to the actually more relevant stuff with Chaos Sorcerer. Chaos Sorcerer, of course, going to 2 was interesting. Why it went to 1 in the first place. The reason, of course, why they brought it to 1 is because they brought Blackluster Soldier back, so they didn't think, oh no, we can't get Chaos, too much fun, so we're going to take away as many of the Chaos Sorcerers as we like. So putting it back to 2 is reasonable, because of course Chaos Stun or Chaos Dragons have not been doing anything, especially considering Evil Swarm, even though are not the most highly rated competitive force, are still a good deck, and of course do shit all over Chaos Dragons. So of course Chaos Sorcerers to 2 will mean that they have more options. With that in mind, moving on to Fire Formation Tenki, which of course is the most relevant change that was not included in the list that I gave you. Fire Formation Tenki, of course, is one of the cards that people thought would get hit anyway, and of course it is actually getting hit, going to a semi-limit. Of course, a card like that, it very deservingly would go to a limit, to say 1 per deck. However, of course, it being such a key card in Fire Fist and a lot of other Beast Warrior based decks which really can't survive without it, it is fair enough, especially considering Bujins are just being released from Judgment of the Light and of course are getting additional support in Shadow Spectres and beyond. So of course they really do need that Tenki unless they give them their own in-theme Searcher, which I sincerely doubt will happen because Tenki exists. So it going to a semi-limit is reasonable, and a good limit at that. Of course, the addition of a Rooster being limited will mean that Fire Fists, plus the fact that they only now have 2 Tenkies, are going to take a reasonable hit. However, of course, if you have ever played a Fire Fist deck, you will know for a fact that them having 2 Tenkies is not going to be too much of a problem on them, considering the searchability of Tenki is ridiculous. So don't worry too much about Fire Fist. Just because Rooster has gone to 1 and Tenki's gone to 2 doesn't mean they're going to become, well, they will become less good, but it's not going to mean they're not going to be any less good to play competitively, especially considering so much other stuff has been hit, so do not worry about it. And of course, Bear's going to be in the tin, so of course everyone's going to have access to it, which means everyone's going to have access to their Tenkies. In addition to the fact that, of course, Pot of Duality has gone from 2 to 3 from the list, which of course I told you in the previous video, which means that, of course, Tenki going to 2 instead of 3 and Duality coming back means that you're not going to necessarily lose consistency in a Beast Warrior deck. You're just going to get it in different ways. So that's pretty much it. Those are the additional changes to the ban list. However, there's some additional things that will be happening for the OCG. So the main one that's going to be happening is that the OCG, I shit you not, are going to be getting not 2 restricted lists a year. They're going to be getting 4. Double the amount of restricted lists a year. And of course, excluding the September list, this list that I'm currently talking about, the changes will take place in November, February, April, and July, meaning that, of course, 4 lists. Next off, of course, this list, the September list, is not actually going to go in place September the 1st in the OCG. It's going to be going into place later on in September. I'm not quite sure what the date it is officially going to go in place, but it won't be for September 1st, it'll be the latter end. However, the TCG list is still going to be put into place September 1st, so don't be going crazy about why it's Toronto. Ugh, no one cares. The TCG are still be getting a list on the 1st. With that in mind, though, this is oh god, this is interesting. But in addition to that, of course, there are going to be some new tournament and deck construction rules that can be introduced into, in addition to regular formats and regular tournaments that can happen on a more local basis, and of course on a bigger basis as well, which of course will be working alongside the restriction lists that will be more prolific in the OCG. And of course, none of these are confirmed for the TCG. However, if they do well in the OCG, I can see they, of course, will be making the move over to the West, simply because they want to try and keep the games as similar as possible. So, the new changes, format-wise, or rules-wise, are the fact that there's going to be a concept duel, in which you can build your deck based on a new tournament theme every time. Decks built along the same theme lines will be competing against each other. The themes each time is the same for the entire country, so your region will be based. So the rule that is the concept duel's rule will be the same for that region, your country. So it may not just be Europe. Let's hope it's not just Europe and actually country-based. Europe player, I know, right? Next off, of course, so basically, monster-type duel decks. There will be monster attribute type decks, archetype specific decks, for example. They are all possibilities with this new format. Next off, of course, we have no limit duels, which the tagline, of course, is use all kinds of cards. The ultimate dueling will allow you to use all kinds of cards. Now then, what kind of duels will await you? Each shop can now choose their own forbidden and limited cards. This will mean that on a more local basis, your shop or your provider of your tournaments will actually be able to control what is limited and forbidden, which is a very interesting point, and of course nicer. And of course it will mean that personally for a local, they may not have many people that use like the biggest decks, but they can still have a format that is good for them on a smaller basis, which allows them to give a more personalized kind of atmosphere for a locals, because everyone's locals are different, so why not cater a list or a format for that mindset? So it's an interesting idea, these new formats. Of course, I would want to hear everything about what you think about all of these changes in the comments down below or as a video response. Of course, the main things about this I want to know, of course, are Tenki going to 2, Chaos Sorcerer going to 2, what do you think about those? And of course, the OCG getting 4 lists a year. Tell me what you think about that in the comments down below as a video response. My personal opinion is that I'm not too worried. My general, what I think is that the OCG getting 4 restricted lists a year is to give Konami greater control over the stuff that they release. Of course, major releases, I think there are about 3 or 4 major releases per year, and of course I think they're going to make them coincide with the November, February, April and July in which the lists would change. So with this in mind, this list actually makes sense. The September list now makes sense. Of course, with so many goddamn changes to this list. This year is just huge. It's unprecedented how many changes were happened with this list. But with that in mind, it makes sense now. We have all of these cards coming off the ban list as well, which of course wouldn't necessarily have happened in the past. Of course, cards that have been previously banned or limited, they stagger them off the ban list. So, of course, for example, Tsukiyomi being the prime example, which was previously banned, made it limited, made it semi-limited, and now with this list will be unlimited entirely because they staggered it out, realised with each change to its status competitively, nothing really happened, so they reasonably was able to just get rid of it from the list. However, of course, there are some unlimited cards in this list which actually, I think, reasoning was at 1 before, so I don't know, they just made it go to 3. So the fact that they're going to be giving more lists per year means that actually get as much stuff off the list as possible, so they can make minimal changes with these lists per year. I sincerely doubt these 4 restricted lists they're going to have a year are going to be huge game-changing changes that they'll make. And by that I mean I don't think they're going to be making changes per list. There may be like 1 or 2 cards that they will update that with. So it basically, I like to think of it not as like 4 huge lists. It may be, well, 4 lists but smaller lists. Of course, if they coincide it with the card releases, it means they can, if, for example, there is a really broken card they just released in a certain set, if they see that card get an astonishing amount of use and it's really unhealthy for the game, next set, next ban list even, then they can hit it appropriately. So, with that in mind, I quite like the idea of additional ban lists per year. But that's just my opinion, and of course it may be flawed or wrong. So in the comments down below as a video response, do tell me what you think about additional ban lists per year, in addition to telling me what you think about the additional ban list changes which I told you in this video. Of course, we do not have a confirmed TCG list. Of course, you'll have to wait for the 20th for that. However, of course, I sincerely doubt there are going to be any changes from the OCG list to the TCG list. With that in mind, though, do tell me what you think about this list anyway and what you're looking forward to for the TCG format. That is pretty much it. I'm Jack Clark, the Eager Musketeer. More videos coming out to you soon, but until then, goodbye.